Sakshi Khanna. I am the chairperson of IR for this academic year. And on behalf of the entire industry relations cell, I would like to welcome each one of you to the Resume Masterclass 2022. We are extremely delighted today to have our alumnus, Mr. Gopaladhar, as the guest speaker for this event. So before we move forward, I would like to request the Vice Chairperson of IR, Sakshi Pandey, to give you all a brief introduction about our guest speaker and explain to you all the flow of this event. So over to you, Sakshi.
Hello everyone. It gives me and IR IIC S.P.I.T extreme pleasure to welcome back our alumnus, Mr. Gopala Dhar. As our CP mentioned, Mr. Dhar is currently working as an artificial intelligence engineer at Google. He has previously worked with Quantify as a machine learning engineer. In his time at S.P.I.T, he was one of the technical team members of the Robotics and Automation Committee, where he has worked on cutting edge technology, algorithms, and control system to compete in the Asia Pacific Robocon. Today, he is here to share with all of you some tips on resume building, placements, and his journey to Google. We will first have Gopala sir sharing his experience, and then towards the end, we will keep the room open for all of your questions. However, if in between of the presentation you all have any doubts, you can drop them in the WhatsApp group created, and our team will make sure that they are asked during the Q&A session. And after that, we will announce the name of all the first year students who have been put in the round 3 interviews for the IR's subcommittee for this current academic year. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Gopala sir to kindly take this session forward.
Hey, thanks a lot, Sakshi. But please refrain from calling me sir. I'm really not that big shot. um, first of all, thanks a lot, guys, for having me here, and thank you all for taking out time and attending this session. Hopefully, you'll gain more than you'll lose in this session, right? So let me give you a small introduction about myself. I'll keep it as brief as I can. My name is Gopala. I have graduated from S.P.I.T in the year 2020. Uh, BE Electronics was my branch. Yeah, and I've worked for about 2 years in Quantify as a machine learning engineer, and presently I work as an AI engineer with Google. Um, a small fact about me is that in my previous stint at Quantify, I have taken about 100, actually more than 100 interviews for mid to senior level positions. I've taken round 1 interviews, technical, mostly technical, for mid to senior level positions, and some of them got higher. Right. So, although I may not be the perfect person to advise you guys here, like obviously everyone has their own experiences and every different things and different ways of doing stuff, but I'll definitely share my personal experiences and my personal all the things that have helped me and all the things that I have done, and yeah, basically my experience from the field I can share with you guys. Okay, so before we begin, right, I'll share the presentation. The way the session is going to be is that I'll take this presentation within, and this should end in around 20 to 30 minutes, right? We'll try to keep this short and give you back the time so that if you guys have any questions, any queries, you can definitely use the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can, sort of have a discussion here. Okay. Quick disclaimer, whatever I say in this meeting is just my opinion, right? You may not agree with that, and that's fine. And this is purely mine. It's not of any other person, and I'm not representing any organization. Okay, with that cleared out, so let me just start presenting. Okay. Cool. Cool. So hey guys. This, as you know, this is the Resume Masterclass. Sounds very fancy, but it's not really that fancy. So I'll start with discussing the agenda of this meeting, right? So the question which you should ask yourself, and I'm assuming that most people here are from first year. That's what I've been told, first and second year, I believe. So, what is a good resume, right? And here I've put in like basically 4 pointers, and we can discuss more on these. But the main 4 things, or rather the main 3 things which you should definitely know is that the good resume should be ATS compliant. You should always follow the principle of KISS, keep it simple, stupid, or in other words, less is better. Definitely, it always helps. And the third point, which I will be focusing on, is that you should always know your resume. And then there'll be a few pointers here and there, which basically helped me out in my journey, professional journey, rather. Yeah, and after this is done, we will have a look at a few resumes. I believe they are good starting point for you guys to look and start formulating your resumes. Case in point that you guys are in your first year, so don't fret. You have a lot of time. This is just like an early start for you guys, a head start. Have a look at this. If you don't understand maximum things, that means you're in the right presentation, right? So not knowing is a good thing here. Okay, so I guess we can move to the next slide then. The first thing which I'm going to discuss about here is ATS compliance. So ATS stands for Applicant Tracking System. So as you know, when you submit your resume or your CV, be it for an on-campus placement or even for like a job which job through job portals like LinkedIn and all, whenever you submit it, the recruiter will not directly go through your resume unless it's you're getting referred by someone. Then it's a different case. Most likely it will be passed through an ATS, like an ATS system, which is basically an applicant tracking system. So what that system does, it's a simple algorithm which will parse through your resume and extract essential details, right? Details like your name, your grades, your work experience, previous history, and all those other things, right? So why do we talk about ATS compliance? Is that a lot of times what you'll see is that fancy resumes, right? Fancy resume templates which have a lot of color and a lot of diagrams and all. They look good, but they're good only if a human is reviewing them. But sorry to burst that bubble, but most of the times the resume will not be looked at by a human, at least not in the first stages, correct? So on the left side, you can see this is a like a resume, sample resume, which I found online. It's of Samuel Guitire. So this one, right? It has a lot of flashy stuff going on over here. Like we have stuff and skills and expertise in terms of cubes, which represent grayed out cubes, and dark cubes, which represent this person's let's say experience in a field. While visually this looks very enticing, it looks very nice and all, but what happens is that when you pass it through this ATS system, right, the system doesn't know what to do with this, right? Let's say you are extremely good at one language, but extremely a novice in the other language. So what's going to happen is that it's going to weigh in both those languages at the same level. So it's not going to play out in your favor, right? uh, Similar sort of example I've kept here as well on the right side. It's like a lot of people I've seen a lot of reviewed a lot of resumes. A lot of people do this mistake. Like, let's say programming, right? They give themselves stars out of, let's say, 5 or 6. It's good visually, but again, ATS system will not know what to do with this, right? Let's say you're extremely confident with Java, but you're let's say a novice in CSS or HTML, right? Then you shouldn't use this, and this is not going to help. In fact, this will cause the ATS system to read random ASCII characters into your into the basically into their database. It's not going to look good for you. Even though this looks visually very good, it's not going to look pretty nice for you. And also, don't waste the real estate on your resume by adding icons. Like you can see phone, email, and all this. Don't waste your real estate here. It's not going to benefit you at all. On the right side, there's like a super boring resume. But trust me, I've met a lot of people in this industry and a lot of super talented people who have this boring template, right? And I'm going to show you that in a while. But this template is very good. It's very effective because it just has text, and it has text in a modular fashion, right? You have your education followed by your industries. Then you can have basically your different pointers across different things. Let's say different languages, you can just mention let's say expert in let's say Python, Java, novice or beginner in, let's say, 3 4 languages, whatever is your comfortable listening. And this is not just for technical folks, by the way. Uh, I know for a fact that this also works for different other roles, let's say in consulting roles as well, and also for roles which are pertaining to, let's say, marketing. I've had friends who have had this certain resume which look exactly like this. So if you're worried that I'm just going to, be yapping about technical stuff, don't worry. I have a resume of a very dear friend with me who is working as a consultant at McKinsey. So McKinsey, if you know, it's one of the biggest consulting firms in the world. I'll show you his resume. So I think this should be fairly simple to understand. Make sure that your resume looks quote unquote like this towards the right. It may look boring to you, but the system, the ATS system, is going to love this, and that's what you want, right? A human will most likely come very late um, into the picture. Keep in mind that this is not the ideal or the perfect resume template, but it's still better than the one in the left. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause. You can absorb this, and meanwhile, I'll move to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide is my personal mantra as well, and I've seen a lot of people follow this religiously. It's the principle of less is better. So we'll take this point by point. Just have 5 points here, and I think this is a meta sort of explanation. Like I'm saying less is better, and I'm just using 5 points to explain this. The first point is don't over-explain yourself. Don't oversell yourself. Most likely the other person who's sitting on the other end knows a lot more than you, and even if the person doesn't know, the other person does not have that much amount of time to go through the whole thing. You may have like done superb activities, and you may be super talented in something, but don't over explain yourself. Even in your resume, keep it short, right? So this is like a segue to the next point. The next point is single line explanations are the best. And trust me, single line explanation means you know your stuff, you know what you worked on, and that's why you can summarize it in just one line with less than, let's say, less than 10 or 15 words. Less than 15 words, you can explain yourself. I know it's not very easy to do that, but in general, if you're writing a resume, try to keep it very, very short and crisp. And yeah, no matter how awesome you think your work you might be doing, which it may be awesome, right? It will definitely be awesome. Uh, but keep it simple, keep it in single line. Don't over explain yourself. Next thing we're going to move here is leverage each sentence of your resume in your interviews. Okay, so this is an interesting piece of, let's say, piece of advice which I got, and I've always used this. So whenever you go in an interview, most likely, not always do, but most likely your interviewer is going to, skim through your resume. He's going to find out things which you've done and try to, question you on those. So ideally, each and every sentence that you write in your resume, right, you should be able to leverage them in conversations. So let's say I have developed a system, or let's say you've developed a system. Any one of you has developed a system. It uses a lot of fancy technologies. But if you ask me to explain that, I'll explain it in one sentence, right? And that sentence will be like, let's say I developed an end-to-end pipeline to leverage XYZ technology. That's it. Correct? Now, a lot of people may not agree with this, and that's perfectly fine. But here's what happens, right? When you go in an interview, and let's say I'm the interviewer and I read, okay, you leveraged XYZ, let's say you used XYZ technology at this scale to build an end-to-end pipeline. My first question is going to be like, okay, can you explain what you did? So you see what happens here. If you write, you purposely limit the amount of information you are providing. What's going to happen is that the interviewer will be compelled to ask you, and then the ball will be in your court. So when the ball is in your court, then it's your, like, then you can row the ship, right? You know what to speak, you know what not to speak. But on the other on the other end of the spectrum is I've seen a lot of people, they explain the whole thing what they've done. Like, let's say they've used this technology, well, implementing this algorithm, using this language, and then you're having you're using this framework and this and that. So if you put everything on the resume, I as an interviewer have nothing to ask you, right? What will I ask you? I already know you use this and this. So there's nothing to discuss, right? Then I'm just going to be like, oh, you use this. You're going to say, yeah. Then I'm going to ask you, okay, what did you use in this? Did you use Python? You'll be like, yeah, I've used Python. End of story. We move to the next point. So you're not able to leverage that point which you've written there, right? This goes even for, your non-technical people. who will be writing your resume, write those, those, single line explanation in such a way that when you sit in an interview, the other person will be compelled to ask and listen to your story, rather than you giving everything, them every item on, whatever you've done on a tray to them, so that they'll be like, oh, okay, I've already read all this, so there's nothing here that I can ask, moving on to the next question. Don't let that happen to you. And oftentimes, we do that to ourselves, so just keep an eye open for that. Next thing would be to use action verbs and adjectives. This is, I think, fairly common. You will hear a lot of people telling you this. So I have actually had I had one link for you guys. I'll share it across. So that's one, I think, Howard's list of action verbs, which you should definitely first of all go through. It's like awesome resources to use. Uh, yeah, I'll take questions in a bit, but please feel free to put questions there. Yeah, so action verbs and adjectives, definitely you should use them. And here's the thing, right? When you're trying to explain something, always try to abstract away the technical stuff. Even if let's say you're doing something, let's say you're in operations, or you're in consulting, or let's say you're in marketing, abstract away the technical stuff, whatever your domain may be. Right? Don't put everything on the resume which will explain the whole process, right? The interviewer will not read the whole thing, because I've taken around 100 interviews. We don't have time, right? There's no time. There's like 6 or 7 seconds you have to go through the whole thing. Nobody's going to read all that. And if you've written so much information, I already know what you've done, right? So in my mind, I already know, okay, this. There is no curiosity on my end to ask you what's going on here. So I'll move on to better questions. Correct. And last thing here is avoid putting a picture in the resume. I'll be honest here. I've done this. I put my picture on the resume, and I've been told to remove that. So again, this is my personal experience. Avoid putting a picture in your resume. It's nobody wants to look at your picture on the resume. They rather look at your face in real life, or maybe on a meet or GVC. Okay, so I'll give you guys a moment to absorb any of these points. Maybe formulate some questions, put it on the chat. Otherwise, I'll move to the next slide in a moment. Okay, cool. So let's move to the next slide. So here's my possibly my favorite slide. At least when I created it, I figured that this might be the most interesting one. So know your resume, right? It's a fairly straightforward thing which I've put here. Some people will say, okay, well, there's nothing interesting in this. You already know that you should know your resume. But what does it mean? So the first thing is, be fully aware of what you write. Each and every line, each and every word that you put in your resume, you should know why it's there. And you should know that if I put your resume and I ask you, your answer should be there with, your reply should be there. Why is it there? What did you do? You should have that answers ready. People will write resumes. In fact, this has happened with me as well. You create the first draft, you're not so sure why you've written some things there. And eventually, by the time, you get to your interview, you forget why it's even there. So at that time, people stammer, right? It's natural to stammer at that time. You get nervous and you start stammering. So be fully aware of what you write. And this is a segue to the next point. Do not be dishonest with what you put in. And this is probably the biggest turnoff for an interviewer, if you are dishonest with what you put in, right? Let's say you've worked with a team, and in a team, some people will do phenomenal job in something, and some people will do phenomenal job in something else. Let's say you've worked in a team which is developing like an awesome, let's say an ML ops system, and there's you've put in your resume like developed or co-developed an ML ops system using XYZ technology. So if I ask you, okay, what did you do in your co-develop? How did you co-develop? What did you help? Your contribution. It should be your individual contribution, right? A lot of people put those stuff in, like let's say I'll put that fancy words here, buzzwords there, so that my resume gets shortlisted and all that. But if you are you start speaking, and then the first sentence which you'll utter is that, oh, I didn't work on this, my my colleague did, or my friend worked on it. I've seen that happen to I would say a lot of people in in interviews. And that's like it's not a really great thing, right? Then it shouldn't be in your resume if you've not done that. Or you need to call that out explicitly, that I, like, let's say in this project you developed a certain section, just a certain section of this module. Don't call out as if you developed the whole thing or the whole thing, right? So unless and until you know the whole deal, don't write it there. And your response should probably never be, the first line should never be that, oh, my colleague made this, I did worked on this thing. So then my follow up is going to be, then why, what's doing in your resume, right? A resume should tell your story, your contributions, and your let's say your impact to that project. It shouldn't be like, oh, this is what my team did. That's great what your team did, but what was your impact? Okay, so the third one is going to be use appropriate words indicating your level of expertise. Again, since you guys are in college, right? There will be times when you'll be learning a lot of things, and you might want to put it in your resume. Let's say you're learning a new language, let's say C++, right? You're not that familiar with it, so put it there, beginner in C++, but let's say expert in Python or Java or whatever. Put it there, put that distinction over there, because if you do not put that distinction over there, then what's going to happen is that I'm going to assume that you're perfect in all of these things, all of these technologies, right? And then when I ask you a question and you're not able to answer, then it's going to be awkward, right? In your interviews, you should always avoid these awkward confrontations. So you think out what all, if you put it something, what all will be the possible scenarios the interview can ask you, and then have some sort of a broad response ready, not the whole thing, right? Don't cram it, so it's not an examination, but uh, have some sort of a, idea of what you would be saying. And in case you're not really familiar, just put it there that started working on this language or this technology from the past month, or beginner or novice in this technology. Don't put fancy terms just to get your resume selected, because if I ask you something and you don't know that, and it's the first and second question, the interviewer is not going to like it, because you're essentially bluffing things, which is not really nice, because generally the other person will be really really smart, and they always think of it like this, that you are in college and you know how to bluff. Someday I was also in college and I was in your position, and I would also bluff. So everyone knows the tricks of the trade. So don't try that on, especially on in technical resumes, technical interviews. Don't try that. Um, so the last point over here is that showcase your pointers or your grades as per your advantage. So this is a controversial topic. Yeah, of course, sir. We would know. So the last one is a bit controversial, but so hear me out, okay? Your pointers and grades will be going up and down throughout these 4 years, and that's okay, right? Be fine, be okay with the fact that some things are not in our control and some things are, right? Uh, let's say in your first year, I'll give you one example, and sort of an example that will help you understand what that point means. Let's say in your first year you get a 10 pointer, right? It's an amazing feat, right? Getting a 10 pointer in first year is an amazing feat. People barely pass first year. It's difficult, right? I'll be honest with you. First year is the difficult year. And let's say in your second year you get an 8 pointer, right? So person A might want to leverage the fact that they got 10 pointer in their first year. They might want to put it in their resume, sort of like BE first year pointer, 10 pointer, and then BE second year, let's say 8 pointer, right? Or someone else might want to take an average, like 10 plus 8, and just give the final pointer. It's going to be 18, it's going to be 9. So again, this is up to you how you want to leverage that, but it helps. It helps in a way that, let's say in, again, let's same example. First year you got 10 pointer. Next year, because of some unforeseen situations, some things happen, you get an absolutely a pretty bad point. Let's say hypothetically 5 pointer you get, right? So sometimes you may not be comfortable putting that 5 pointer in that, let's say year 1 10 pointer, year 2 5 pointer. You may not be comfortable putting that, and that is okay, right? Nobody should be, you shouldn't force yourself to put something in resume which you're not comfortable with. So what you could do instead is that you can just aggregate out, like BE, whatever your branch is, current pointer, followed by 10 plus 5 by 2. Right? It's going to be 7.5. That is one thing. And then in the further points, you can write got 10 pointer in first year. So always leverage your pointers, your grades in according to your situation. It will be different for everyone, right? Let's say a person who's consistently getting 10 pointers in all those years. There's no point in putting 10 10 10 10, right? You just put one average, just 10, or someone who's getting 9 consistently. So there is no one rule or one size fits all here. That's what I want you to understand. Use your pointers wisely. Again, I wouldn't call this as bluffing because you're being honest here. If you write your current GPA, you will be putting an average there. That's not technically bluffing. But if somebody asks you what is in your first year, second year, then you will have to reply. But most likely, they will never ask you. Okay. So again, this is my 2 cents that they will generally never ask you about that. So again, I'm going to give you guys a moment to absorb this, and then if there are some questions, you can put them in. Else, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so I believe we can move to the next slide, which is miscellaneous pointers. Okay, uh, these pointers, I believe, you will experience and learn throughout your journey in your college. A lot of teachers will tell you, and a lot of times when you apply to different places, they will also tell you these pointers. But it is better if you already have an idea of what you should do. First and foremost, limit your resume size to 1 to 2 pages, guys. Unless and until you have like let's say you have 5 years of experience or more, don't make your resume more than 2 pages. Nobody's going to read that, and I'm just being honest with you, right? I'm sorry if it sounds a bit rude, but nobody's going to read that, right? They know that, let's say we are all new to this field, to the industrial field, or let's say to the professional field. So the expectation will always be 1 to 2 resume. Again, the lesser the better. 1 to 2 pages should be more than enough, actually. Use your font accordingly. Second point is the same, which I say, unless you have work experience, do not use more pages. It's not going to look nice. And I know personally, I know a lot of people, a lot of talented people, actually, really, really, these people had done a lot of things till their final year. They had resumes of 5 pages. Nobody's going to read that. And they had to change it to like 1 or 2 pages. So don't make that mistake. Third point is certifications are good only if you've learned from them. Okay, so this is a reality check from myself to your side. Certifications are good. I mean, if you put it in your resume, I will look at it and I know that you should be able to answer anything that I ask. Because let's be honest, you've done a certification or you've done a course in it, right? If I tell you that I've done a course in, let's say, calligraphy, so then you would expect me to be have some sort of, some level of expertise in calligraphy. And if I don't have that, then that's going to be a negative on my side. So if you put a certification there, right? Let's say we put a certification or a deep learning certification from DLI, I don't know, NVIDIA. There's a lot of certification places. And I ask you a question on deep learning, I would expect as an interview that you know that subject inside out. If you don't know that, and yet you've put in a certain certification, reconsider. Really reconsider, because this thing backfires very fast, right? Because getting certifications, everyone knows. Like you can go on Coursera, you can go on Pluralsight. There are a lot of platforms, Udemy, and all that. You can get a certification, right? It's not really that difficult. Anyone can do it. But if you put the certification there, and if I ask you something and you're not able to answer, or you tell me, oh, I don't remember, that's not going to look good, right? That's going to backfire. So don't do that, right? Again, I have had people in interviews who tell me, oh, I don't remember what it is in the certification. That means you didn't pay attention in the certification. So that's not a nice thing to have in your resume. Unless those certifications are professional certifications. Now, so professional certifications are great, but they are expensive. You need to pay a lot for them. Maybe once you go to your, whichever professional field you go in, that time do professional certifications, because professional certifications, in order to get that, you have to give like a long exam for 2-3 hours. Go to an exam center, give an exam, and then you get the certification. So those one really pack a punch, right? If you have a professional certification, that will pack a punch. But this is very expensive. I'd advise only to go for them once you start working. Okay, fourth point. If you're unsure of a skill, avoid putting it in. Pretty straightforward. If you're not sure about the skill, or you just heard it from a friend, it's just a buzzword. Let's say AI, right? AI is a buzzword. I mean, tell this to people all the time. AI is a buzzword. You put AI in, and if you put AI in your resume, I would assume you know everything under the sun about AI. And if you don't, then I'm gonna ask you, why is it there, right? That's what interviewers do. They are there to critically examine your understanding. And sometimes it's not there to mock you or to make you feel little, but it's also there to see how you react and how you come up with an explanation, or how do you come up with something which is believable, right? Because a lot of times you have to think on the top of your mind and have responses ready. Correct. um, the next point is use formatting wisely. Bold and italics. Don't use bold everywhere, don't use italics everywhere. Use them to highlight certain points, right? You may have done something which is like extremely good, and you use some technology which is like extremely new, like Jax or something else. Just italicize that, or use bolds there, just to showcase that you can do this, and this is something which I should have my attention at. Again, if you italicize it or you make it in bold, I would assume that you are an expert in this. So expect questions accordingly. And my last point here would be to always export your resume as a PDF. Always, always. See, this is something which people will never tell you, or maybe they will, eventually they will tell you. But do not give me your resume as a doc file, because doc processor depends on which year or which version of doc I'm using. If I'm using Word 98, then it will not open in the same way it will open in Word 2003 or 7 or whatever. So always export as PDF. Even if you make a little small change, export as PDF. Uh, yeah, I think that is one thing which you should probably never forget. Uh, yeah, I think that's pretty much it from the miscellaneous pointers as well. I'm going to give you one moment to absorb that in. Then we can move to Q&A slash I'm going to show you a few resumes which are mine and my friends. Okay, I think we're good to go to the next slide. Okay, this is a Q&A slide. Let me just move out of this, and let me just showcase my yeah, let me just show you some resumes. Correct. That'll help you understand. Meanwhile, you guys can start putting in your questions in that GVC chat. That'll be fine. Okay. So there you go. So let me know if you can see my screen first of all, and if it's all visible perfectly fine, or is the font too small?
So can you maximize?
Yeah, yeah. Please don't call me sir. Okay, I think this should be it. This should be fine, correct?
Could you do a little more? Yeah, this is perfect.
Perfect. Sorry about that. The orientation of this is a bit different. Anyway, so this was my resume when I was in my third year. Yeah, so this was my resume when I was in my third year. So here's my career objective. Uh, so let me do one thing. Let me just share it to my other screen, because this one is not that nice. Okay. Yeah, just a sec. Cool. So this should be better. Yeah. Cool. So this, you can see this, right? And this should be visible. Cool. So this was my resume, right? So I had no work experience in my third year uh, in 2019. Yeah. So I had a career objective. It was very generic. Again, this is debatable whether or not you should have it here. It's fine if you want to have it, or if you don't want to have it, that's up to you. You guys can have a read about this. I'm going to share them with you if you want. Obviously, there's information which is redacted from this. So here's what I was talking about, right? So I did get 10 pointer in one in my second year, I think. Yeah. So I wanted to use that, right? I want to leverage that. So what I did is that I split up the marks which I got in these three subsections. Right? I could have just chosen to, have the average aggregate here, like 9.94 plus 10 plus 9.04. But instead, I took this path. Again, both of them are fine, perfectly fine. It's up to you. But always use that, use that methodology which is going to help you guys out, right? Which you think you can leverage. For some, it's going to be showcasing pointer. Of some, it would be increasing their overall average. So whatever you feel comfortable in, use that, right? So here was the here's the project and competitions which we guys took part in. You guys can have a look. We also had patents. So yeah. So again, I've put in training. I used to put at least a few courses here and there which I had done, but I was fairly confident in all these. Like if you would ask me, okay, what did you do in this one? I could reply to you at any given point of time, right? But you can see I've just put in three. Like I did a lot more, but I would just put in the three in which I was actually confident in. Now, so here's the next thing, right, which I've put in here, which is technical skills. Now you can observe that everything is one line. It's a single line, right? And it sort of gives you all the idea of what all things I've touched, or the bases which I've sort of covered. One thing to note here would be, at least in my case, whenever you apply for, on-campus interviews, right, you will apply to a broad horizon of companies. You can specifically cater a specific sort of resume template for each of them. But what I did is that I made it very generic. Again, this is debatable. Some people prefer it like that, some people prefer it like this. But once you start professionally working, right, you will always need to chisel your resume to fit in. Anyway, let's just have a quick look through this. So this is what I did. So soft skills, this, that, all that stuff. Co-curricular, if you want to put it, it's fine. So my resume was 2 pages. I was never very proud of it being 2 pages, but it is what it is, right? And I couldn't reduce its size down anymore. So you can put in your personal details if you want, and a reference. Obviously, for reasons I cannot tell you who my reference was here, but you can put the name of any person that you want. That's fine. So this was my resume when I was in college, and now I can show you my resume when I applied at Google. Yeah. So when I applied at Google, this is how my resume used to look like. Just yep. Let me just show my screen. So not a lot of things have changed, except for how I sort of explained what I did. So this is not a lot. It's one para, but it's just 2 sentences, right? And just put the whole gist in that para, and be familiar with each and every word. Like if I ask you, what is this word doing here, what did you do here, you have the answer ready. It doesn't matter what your field is, but always have this answer with you, right? So you can notice how this changed. This has just changed, and now just have my aggregate here, because now I have professional experience. So when you have professional experience, that takes precedence over your grades. Always remember this. Professional experience will always take precedence over your grades. Then there's projects and accolades. Again, these are the same ones which we had done. Here are the few of them. Then whatever patents or publications, you guys have a lot of time. You will definitely do a lot more. So here are some certifications which I did. Few of them are the same, but a few of them are new as well. And notice that this one is bold as well as italicized, because this is a professional certification, right? So professional certification means that you've given an examination for that, and only then you have clarified an examination in a center, like not like on sort of like on a website or something. On a center you go, and there you give an examination for that. That's why it's bold and italic. So I want the interviewer to put their minds to this section or this point. That's why I've sort of bold and italicized this instead of anything else, right? You can see I've italicized this as well. This is how I make that other person move to this one. So notice the technical skills, and see the key differences here, right? Here are the technical skills. I've catered them specifically for ML oriented workloads. So, right, TensorFlow, Keras. If you're not familiar with these terms, it's okay. Anyways, most of them are not going to be valid in a few years. Things change very fast in tech. So all those things like deployment and productions, moving to GPUs and TPUs, and all those things, which was my technical expertise, relevant to the role. The keyword being relevant to the role, I put it over here. Soft skills is the same. This is the same. Yeah, and everything else is the same. Just remove the date and everything is the same. So this is again, this was my resume, like the most recent of my resume. Now I'm gonna show you the resume of my dear friend. He is he's working with McKinsey right now. Uh, Again, McKinsey is the top consulting firm of the world, in case you're not aware. And I'm going to show you his resume, and you're going to feel a bit weird looking at it because of how jam packed it is. But generally, that's how resumes are. So have a look. Cool. So here's this resume. So Soumyadev is his name. So this is how his resume is. One pager, right? It's a one pager, and it has a lot of information there, right? A lot of things which we did are together. And you'll notice that one point I raised in my presentation was that use metrics, right? So you see how his vision mentioned this. Users with billions in impacts. So the metrics are there. There are quantifiable metrics there, right? Like this one, 4.3. I can see 4.3 by 5, 24 by 7, 50% increase. There are numbers there. So when you put numbers, right, you're putting an impact. When you put impact, people are really, really impressed by that. Like if you've actually bought in some sort of an impact, right? Because impact is what matters, right? See how he uses, italicizing the patent numbers, bolding them, how he, highlights what he's done. One liner, everything is a one liner in his resume. And this is like a perfect, it's this resume format is even better than mine. But you may feel it's a bit clunky, but this is how it is, right? A lot of people have to write the resume like this. Again, this person is more into consulting. He was into marketing and a lot of other things, more towards MBA sort of a management sort of things. If you want to connect with this guy, is an awesome person. Here's his name. I'm going to share the resume template. You guys can have a look, and definitely use this opportunity to understand. And just to show you, right, even in tech, this sort of resumes are not rare. So I had a very dear like a dear colleague of mine I have worked with. He's a very talented guy. He was a part of the Brain team, Google Brain team. This guy, I'll show you his resume, right? You'll be surprised to see how it looks like. Yeah, so you go. So here's this guy, right? So he's a Stanford graduate. So, but that's how he puts it. Stanford, this is it. He doesn't even mention his GPA or something. Then professional experience, single liners. Single liner. Whatever he does, single liners. And even in his technical experience, if you see, let me just see. So there you go. Computer skills, single liner. Python, MATLAB, R, C++, Java, ML, and big data. That's it. So you don't need to over-explain yourself. Like this person, I know this person personally. This person is like an absolute, like this is a person who's a beast of a researcher. He has done a lot of work in research, and this is how his resume looks like. It's very simple, and it's a 5 pages because he's done that much amount of work. Right? You see all these publications and stuff. This person has done a lot of work. So unless you've done as much as work as this person has, your resume should not be more than 2 pages. Right? Yeah, and I think that should be it from the presentation. I know I have bored you guys enough, so let's move to the questions. Please feel free to put in the questions in the chat, or if you guys want to ask, you can raise your hand, and that is also fine. Or you can just unmute and ask the questions. Okay, let's see. The first question is from Pratham. What are the skills we should learn to become a good AI engineer? Okay, fair enough. So at a college level, right, you should start learning the basics, the fundamentals, things like basics of ML, basics of DL, how do you deal with data. Then you can move to distributed processing, how conventional distributed processing works, how do you scale up systems and all that. My recommendation would also be to be familiar with software development paradigms, because it's very important to know that. You can't run away from software development just to do ML. Don't make that mistake. Yeah, so definitely do that. Follow those pointers. But see, in a college level, there's not a lot of things. Participate in hackathons if you want. Participate in competition. Use this time to explore. naturally grow into your interests and likings. Don't force yourself to do something just because it's the buzzword. Don't do that, right? uh, that's not going to be very useful. Should I have more than one version of my resume in order to appeal to people of different domains? Rajas, definitely yes. I would totally agree to that. I was too lazy in my college to do that, but that's not the right thing to do. So you should totally do that, especially if you have different domains of interest. If your interest lies in, uh, let's say marketing as well as consultancy as well as finance, have different sort of resumes with slightly different changes made to them, so that you can assist, make it easy for the other person to understand where you come from. Okay. Vyom Doshi, between comparative programming and completing practical projects, what stands out in the resume? So I would say that you're asking the wrong person. I've never done comparative programming. I've always done practical projects, so I cannot speak on behalf of the comparative programmers. My opinion, projects definitely help, because in the real world, you'll realize that comparative programming doesn't, it sort of doesn't fit in anywhere. It's good, it helps you solve problems fast, but that's pretty much it. Like, if you don't have projects, if you don't know what scalability concerns are, how things work in real world or in industries, is very different from how you do things in like in a college project, or when you're in your pastime. So I'm not the right person to ask this, but I would say definitely focus on projects, which will give you a more holistic view of how things happen. But definitely, you should comparatively program as well if you're interested in that. What makes an impact? Competitions, hackathons, or internships, or projects, or ranks on coding platforms? Good question. All of them make an impact, Komal. I would say more than impact, you should optimize for your exposure and to explore things. Because see, one thing which most people will not tell you is that your college days, right? Your 4 years or 3 years, whatever is left, this is the time when you are going to sort of shape your career. So optimize to understand what you want to do, rather to follow the crowd and what they want to do. This is what I did, and this is what my friends also did. If you optimize to find what your calling is, you'll be in the right place. So if you feel like this competition is good for me, go for it. If you feel this hackathon I should participate in, I'm interested, then go for it by all means. And internships is another way of doing the same thing, right? Internships is a way of getting real world experience. So if you feel like this internship will be helpful for me to learn whatever skills which you want to learn, then go for it, right? Okay. Next one is from Aditya. Is following a chronological format in one's resume necessary, or can we draft one according to our skills, like best skills first and below it next best, and so on? It's up to you. I would say, yeah, keep your best skills on the top. I followed a chronological format because it helped me update my resume easily, so that I don't miss out things which I've done in the past. It happens when you grow professionally, or when you grow in your like career, or let's say even in your college days, you will have things which will be deprioritized, but you need to keep track of them. That's why I use chronological order. You can keep it in the order of things which you are familiar, or you have your expertise in. That's also fine. Okay. Dual skills then below next. Okay, so next one is from Rutvik. For people from non-tech branch like EXTC and ETRX, and yourself being from a non-tech branch, please guide how to manage college studies while learning technical stuff, and also add some resources to learn from. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. So, college studies and this, it's hard to explain. I would say if you pay attention in your lectures, right, or you just take notes, or somebody from your group is taking notes, that should be enough. I would say, like, just pay attention. Just pay attention in whatever moment you are, right? So, my professional knowledge or work has always come from competitions. Right? We took part in competitions, developed projects for those competitions, not necessarily software exclusive. Sometimes they had hardware as well. So I used to spend a lot of time, working on hardware-oriented projects, on software-oriented projects, to figure out, what my calling was. So do the same thing, right? It's trial and error, and that's why you have your 4 years here. Any resources you would say? Definitely, resources. There are plenty of resources online, right? You can learn from Coursera. and then build some projects. You can definitely learn from. It depends on what you want to learn, right? So if you want to learn programming, you have, I think, lead code and stuff. YouTube is your friend. Use YouTube as much as you want. So I used to follow this channel. I'm gonna type the name here. Think, yeah, this one, Sendix. You send. I used to follow this person a lot, and this person helped me understand a lot of different concepts of computer vision as well as deep learning. But there's no one source, right? Experiment. I would say more than learning, implementation is important, because you can learn all you want, but the next day if you don't implement it, you're gonna forget it in 3 days. It's gonna be no use. Um, okay. Okay. Should we include the skills, hobbies that are not relevant to a specific job role? Okay, again, debatable question. I would say you can ignore if you want. I like to put it in. Depends on which company you are interviewing for. Uh, Google has a bit. I mean, Google has a sort of a different interview structure, and sometimes it is a good discussion point which can be brought up in an interview, especially in the final stages of the interview. Like, this is my hobbies, this is what I do, this is how I enjoy my free time and all that. Some of them matter, right? And even if they don't matter, some of them can be good talking points. Don't underestimate the value of good talking points in an interview, especially when you're heading towards the final rounds, right? Nobody wants to work with a person who has no, like, personality, right? Nobody wants to work with such a person. um, so Devang asks, should I showcase what I've learned and developed the bunch of product and being active on platform LinkedIn so that it will make easy to get referrals that people know me better? Okay, so this is a good question. People will not refer you unless you have a personal relation with them. And by personal relation, I don't mean that they should be your best friends or your buddies or any romantic interest. None of that. You need to foster those relationships in a professional environment. Like, unless and until you bring value to the other person, they are not going to entertain you, right? And I'll be honest with you, in some companies, even if you get a referral from some person, and if that person has never worked with you, that referral is not going to help you out a lot. Especially if you're a fresher, it's not going to help you out. So foster real relations, right? If you are, let's say, interested in AI, join meetups. There are a lot of meetups happening on LinkedIn. Interact with people, connect with them, and discuss stuff, right? I used to connect frequently with a person from Google. um, I still connect with him. He's a good friend now. uh, so that guy and I mean, this person is very senior to I am. He doesn't even live in India. He stays in a different country. Uh, but the thing is that we used to discuss a lot of quality ideas about technology, about current affairs in general, right? So unless and until you bring something on the table, it just because you're posting something on LinkedIn, a few people are liking it, maybe a few hundred are liking it. That's not going to, that's good for your personal branding, but nobody's going to vouch for you that, oh, this person knows the whole thing, unless you've actually worked and you've actually fostered that relation with these people, with real people, right? It takes time. It doesn't happen like you'll message somebody. I used to do that too. Message someone, yeah, just refer me. That's not going to happen. uh, okay, next one. How to start learning AIML? Like, what should our very first goal be? Question. Your very first goal should be to create a project and then work backwards. Have a problem statement in your mind. I want to make this or that or whatever you can search online. Figure out if you want to do something specific, and then work backwards. See what all technologies do you need to learn in order to do that, and then eventually, when you learn those technologies, implement those. Publish blogs if you want, right? Publishing blogs is a good way, and then connect with people, right? Discuss your work. That's important. Networking is super important in tech, especially. World is a very small place. Trust me, I can give you a lot of examples. I don't know if you guys will be interested to hear that, but the world is a super small space, and you will find people that. Hello. Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can.
can.
Perfect. I'm sorry, it dropped for a moment. Yeah. So like I said, form relations and form real relations with people, right? Doesn't have to just be limited to talking about AI and ML. Talk about other things, talk about tech, talk about what the other person is interested in, but form relations and form uh, such good relations that tomorrow that person will contact you and he or she will be more interested to refer you than you will be to refer yourself. And that happened with me as well. Okay. What should a student in first year do to enhance their resume? Good question. I would say explore different topics of your interest, not necessarily in tech, right? You can explore whatever you want. Explore consulting, explore finance, explore marketing, whatever you want to explore. Explore tech as well, because see, college is the place where you will explore. And if you are steadfast into following one thing, then this may not be the best approach, I would say. If you optimize to just learn this one thing and then use this, make this your career, you may not know if you want to do this after 2 years or 3 years. So best advice is just to explore. Take your time, explore, look at what other people are doing, see if that interests you. If it does, spend some time and do that. Okay, how is your experience working at Google so far? Also, great presentation. Love the clarity and insights. Thank you, Bhushan. Thank you. My experience working at Google. Sure. Google is a great place to work. I believe few of you may be interested to work in Google. I mean, it's a good company to work in. The people that you interact with are super talented. They are the best in their fields. They know stuff, but at the same time they're very humble, very nice to talk to, very easygoing and very approachable. um, Google has a sort of different types and things. They have a different way of doing things, basically, right? The hierarchy is flat, so you can generally approach anyone that you want to. In fact, you have to approach a lot of people out of your bubble of your team. Let's say you're working with 5 people, but you need to approach frequently people outside as well to take their advice, opinions, some things that they're working on. You need to use those things. So Google promotes all that things. The experience has been great. In fact, I have interacted and worked in my previous stints as well with a few Googlers, not in the same capacity, but yeah, I have I have had the experience working with them. They're great people, right? They're experienced, and they're super humble. Like I have worked at one more place, and I think one thing which Google does really really well, uh, even better than a lot more other organizations, is that uh, the expectation from each and every person is that to know that the people who surround them are just as good as they are. So have that humility in you when you're interacting with people. um, uh, do I need to clarify my gender in the resume? No need to do that. That's perfectly fine. If you want to do it, do it in the personal details, or no need to do that. Nobody's gonna ask you that question anyway. How much exactly does online courses weigh in our resume? See, they will weigh in Ayushi if you are able to answer. Let's say you've done a course on some topic, let's say on DevOps. If I ask you questions on DevOps and you're able to answer, then it's definitely a win. Like, it will tell me that you've done this course and you're dedicated to that course and you know what you're talking about, right? But if you've done the same course and if I ask you questions and you're not able to answer, then that tells me that you've put that certification there just to get brownie points on the resume. Right? Works both ways. Up to you to uh, let's say, how do you want to play it? If you're familiar, very very confident in the topic, by all means do a certification, put that certification name in your resume. But if you're not confident, even after doing the doing the certification, maybe avoid putting that in your resume. Okay, Devanshi Pandey, you mentioned that you contacted a person from Google. How did you do so? And how much did you help in applying at Google? That's a good question. For reasons which I cannot explain here, I sort of worked with this person. Um, Actually, I worked with a few more people as well. And I also tried to contribute to one of the open source repositories for one tool. I think it's called KFP. Yeah, I tried to contribute to their tools. It helps, but more often than not, I would say it definitely helps, especially if you have worked in any capacity with that person. Say, let's say tomorrow I have my personal project, right? Just an example. and I ask for volunteers, or I'm just giving an example, hypothetical situation. uh, I ask for volunteers, and you guys, let's say some person from this meeting, 2 3 people, work with me on that. And if I've worked with you guys in person, right, then I would know that, oh, you are able to do this, you're able to pull this off. And your soft skills matter just as much as your tech skills, or your let's say hard skills. They matter just as much. It definitely helped a lot, right? And Yeah, I would say that it helps in a way that um, it makes your life a bit easier. You get a referral, that's one thing. But yeah, apart from that, you need to already be at that sort of a stage that you have that rapport and that trust and confidence in the other person, that the other person will refer you without you even asking. That is when you know that referral will really help you. Okay, should we do MTech or MS? Totally up to you. I would say it depends, right? If you wanna spend, and if you have the time, and if you wanna invest in yourself a bit more, do MS. If you wanna stay in India, that's also perfectly fine. You can do MTech. You have your seniors who have done both, right? You can look them up on LinkedIn. You'll find people who've done both MS as well as MTech, different people. Um, yeah, they'll definitely help you out in answering that. I have done neither, so I am not the right person to ask. Um, as an EXTC engineer in S.P.I.T, could you suggest some ways to handle academics and also do programming competitive? Or could you give some tips which help you and your fellow mates who do competitive programming? Okay, so first of all, I did not do competitive programming at all. Neither did anyone else in my batch, at least. In electronics, nobody did that. Um, Ways to handle academics, I would say, see, if you're attending college for 5 hours, wrap up your college work in that 5 hours. Do not take that college work with you outside of, let's say, your college or your classrooms. Pay attention in the classrooms. I know sometimes it's difficult, but just try to pay attention, right? Because if you pay attention, then instead of spending 8 hours in doing a task, you can do it in let's say 20 minutes of that classroom time. So definitely, I would say, don't overextend your work, and don't just focus on studies, right? Studies are important, definitely they'll help you learn a lot of things, but spend time doing projects, right? I cannot stress this enough. Take part in competitions if you wish, but definitely do projects. It worked for me, right? It helped me understand what is that I want to do, or what is that which I want to achieve. If I have learned a skill, but I do not have a valid certification for the same, how do I talk about in the resume? You build a project around it, yeah. You have a skill. This is how I did it, right? I learned com- I learned deep learning in my second year. This was a fourth semester. I learned that time, and I built a project which we took into a competition. It was totally like we went to the semifinals, but I believe, right, 2022 me can tell you that it was a crap product. But building that product at that stage will give you the clarity which even working professionals right now who I've worked with in the past will not have. Right, so it's essential that you build products, or you build, let's say, software, or you build something out of it, right? Don't just read about it, do some courses and be done with it. Don't do that, right? Build something. Take your time, understand stuff. uh, yeah. um, yeah. I think that's a question. Next one is, how does working on open source um, projects help in building a strong network? I would say yes. Build open source projects, but don't build them to build a strong network. Build them to help out the community, and eventually things will turn out in your favor. Trust me. I had built an open source. This is after I started working. I built one a hardware driver for an small LCD, just for fun. I built, and I got contacted by a person. He was an ex. I think he was an ex DARPA. I don't know if you guys know what DARPA is. You can search what DARPA is. Let me just switch its full form. DARPA is a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It's in the USA. So he contacted me because he wanted for his personal project he wanted something like that, and we connected and we discussed things. So a lot of things happened, right? Don't just do things to impress others. Do it because you want to do it, and eventually things will, you know, things get put into place. If you do things just to impress others, people are not, trust me, people are really really smart these days, man. They will catch your bluff like this. uh, when did you start practicing projects, and where did you practice them from? Deepika, it's a very funny story. I actually, the first project which I did, in fact, the very beginning of it, it was directly from competition. So there's a competition which CSC department of IIT Bombay has each year. It's called E-Yantra. Your seniors can guide you about that. I took a part in that with my team. It was in my third semester, and that's where I started learning about computer vision. Then eventually learned computer vision, applied that, then learned about algorithms, search algorithms, optimizing strategies, came to know about deep learning, interest, and then started working on all that. So generally, I've always worked for projects in terms of competitions, but luckily in my case, or probably I really was really interested in that kind of stuff. So they turned out into good investments, I would say. Don't do just competition for the sake of getting what do you say, like what is that certificate? Don't do that, right? Do competition so that even today, right, even in my even in my Google interviews, the first it's the zeroth round which happens, person asked me, right, what is with this, what is with that. I was still familiar with each and everything which I had done in like 2 4 5 years ago in my second year, because I was really interested and keen in doing that, right? So unless and until you are keen and interested, that's what's going to matter. Nobody's going to ask you, oh, you got a third prize in this. No, nobody cares about that. Trust me. You know, you need to know the bare bones, let's say, of whatever you do, whatever path you choose. What is the value of having a GSOC project in your resume? Is GSOC Google Summer of Code?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, Sakshi, don't call me sir. Yeah. So GSOC, I have personally, I am not the right person to tell you that, but definitely, if it's something related to Google and you've contributed to open source, definitely put that in, and definitely showcase people that you've worked on GSOC. Um, yeah, it's funny because internally we GSOC means something else anyway. So definitely put it in, and I would say it would definitely add value. Uh, my one advice would be that when you sit for your interviews, right? Um, I know when you're in your pre-final year, your third year, when you sit for interviews, you you may basically choose to sit for different companies, and you may choose to optimize for the company which gives the highest package. I know I did that. It did not end up well, but I did that. I did not get selected in a few companies, but that's fine. Uh, but I would say always focus on what you want to do. Like even after I sat for like my placements in for Quantify. Quantify had a very straightforward process. There's a test, which in general this is what happens, right? You're too early for this, but I'm still going to tell you that is you have a test which is like online assessment, followed by 2 technical rounds for me, and then 1 HR round. That's it. Technical round will, for Quantify, it was ML engineer, so it focused more on ML, basics of ML. How does activation functions work? What is this? What is that? What is ML regression and all that kind of stuff? Those things matter, and they asked me that, and all these things I answered. But in my heart, I just wanted to be in a tech zone. I didn't want to go for a fintech company, yet I applied for one. I think it was PhonePe, but I did not get selected there. So always be always be focused on what you sort of want. Sorry, yeah, be focused on what you want to do in your career. Other than the qualification and resume, what is the next most important thing interview looks for? Your soft skills. Your soft skills will be your ability to make or break a conversation, right? An interview is a place where I'll ask you the most dumbest questions, but you need to be able to somehow wrap that around and play it to your advantage. If you can do that, trust me, you can work for any company that you want, right? Your soft skills, when I say this, it's from a personal experience. Soft skills are more important, if not equally important, than technical skills. Like I know this person, I'm not going to take the names. This person was he was a consultant in Google, like a senior guy consultant in Google, an absolute gem of a person. He had the best soft skills that I've ever met of a person. And I used to know them before my Google days. I used to know this person. Very, very nice to talk to. He used to interact with a lot of people on, I think, on different platforms. Uh, so one fine day, recently, just 2 days back, my manager told me that this person has been promoted, and now he is the regional lead or something for a specific workflow. And one of the top LinkedIn influencers for AI, I'm not going to take her name, now reports to this guy. And I trust me when I say this guy is good in what he does. His technical skills must be good, but I can personally vouch that his soft skills are what got him promoted in what I think he just has been in Google for 10 months. That's it. Uh, um, then there's one question. Yeah. Pratham, does books help in learning programming languages better or online content? Depends on what you're comfortable in. I was always more comfortable on implementation. So, reading a book and implementing, it would take a lot of time. So I generally just focused on implementing through YouTube videos and spending time on. Yeah, I think most of it was YouTube videos only. And to be honest, I'll be honest with you guys. I have worked on AI is just one of the things. ML is just one of the things that I've worked on. I've worked on a lot of different things in my competitive days. It was computer vision. It was ROS, which is like robotic operating system, VREP, a lot of different things, embedded systems, MicroPython. So I've actually explored a lot of things, and then I figured, okay, this is what I like, and this is what I will do. Okay, where we should more focus in first year, studies or project competition? Good question. I would say try to balance them. Right, you don't want to mess up your GPA because some companies still have a GPA consideration. So don't mess them up. Spend some time in studying as well, and spend. I didn't do any competition my first year, but you guys should, right? Definitely, you guys should. But balance out things. Don't mess up. Don't mess up your studies, man. That's something which is will be irreversible. So minimum GPA do we require to maintain in the first year for resume? I would say the higher the better, but I am fully aware that sometimes it's very difficult. In fact, I myself barely managed to escape failing in one subject in my first year. So I would say that pay a lot of attention to your studies as well. Don't falter in any of one of them. That's not going to look good, right? Even if the company doesn't matter, it's not going to look good. Top three things you would suggest us to do as a first year students. Okay, top three things. Okay, I would say first thing would be to talk to your peers, build connections. This is the time where you do that. Your seniors, your friends, batchmates, people from other departments, do that, right? These people will help you out in your life. Trust me when I say this, people will help you out in your life, professionally or otherwise. Second thing would be to explore your talents, see what your friends are doing, what other peer groups are doing, and try to follow them. Or if you have something specific that you want to do that. Third thing would be that um, whatever you try to do, right? What don't do it just for the heck of putting it in your resume. Do it because you're interested to do it. The third point is very important, but mostly people just ignore it. But don't do that, right? You're in your college, you want to figure out what you want to do in your career. You're not here to impress the people who are sitting next to you. That's not going to help. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. It's a good session and a lot. Please do mention your. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's something which I cannot do, Rutvik. Thank you so much for putting it there, but I'm afraid I cannot reveal that number. It's good. I mean, Google definitely pays well. I mean, I don't need to explain that.
All right, I think that's it with the questions. Before we move on to the announcement of the subcommittee of IR, I would like to thank Gopala sir for providing this amount of motivation and guidance to our students today. Your journey from SPIT to Google has been really inspiring, and thanks a lot for sharing all those tips and giving us an opportunity to learn from them. Also, I cannot thank you enough for coming in on a weekday for us So thanks a lot. And we're truly very grateful to you. And thank you everyone for being an amazing audience. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for taking your time, and definitely was a really great session. Thank you, Sakshi, and the IR cell for having such a great crowd. Thanks all. I believe I can drop now.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Okay. Thanks all. See you around.
Thank you, sir.